The Churchville Schoolhouse opens the door to the best education in history. Visitors to the historic Churchville one-room schoolhouse take a step back in time to watch history unfold in a restored and accessible National Register of Historic Places property that dates to the 1850s. Today, students can walk in the footsteps of local farm children from the early days of DuPage County for an authentic living history experience led by a schoolmarm from the early 1900s. A visit to the Churchville one-room schoolhouse is hands-on, educational, and fun. Participants use slate chalkboards and McGuffey readers for the day's lessons, and children will be asked to follow proper classroom etiquette. Reading, writing, and arithmetic are all practiced, and students can test their skills during an old-fashioned spelling bee. And of course, no school day is complete without recess, featuring games of the early 1900s. The Churchville Schoolhouse is a popular program for scouts and day camps too. Group visits can be arranged for service clubs, tour groups, and other adult organizations as well. The Churchville Schoolhouse Living History program is operated by the Elmhurst History Museum. Call the museum today to book a field trip or find out more information at 630-833-1457 or visit our website at churchvilleschoolhouse.org.
Welcome to Elmhurst Now. I'm Ken Bartels, your host. We're here at the Churchville Schoolhouse and we're talking about future programming at the Elmhurst History Museum. No better people to talk to about that than Dave Oberg, the Executive Director of the Elmhurst History Museum, and Dan Bartlett, the Curator of Exhibits. And gentlemen, you're both still relatively new. Dave, you're not as new as Dan, but how long have you been in your respective roles, just to sort of getting started?
Yeah, well, I started on in November 2017 here, so just coming past the 1-year mark now. Yeah.
And I came on board part-time in April of this year and full-time in May.
So, Dave, as it relates to the Elmhurst History Museum, how are you staffed? I mean, Dan's sort of your curator guy for exhibits, but how's the other staffing go?
Yeah, well, I always like to say we got the best staff in the business. We, in addition to Dan and I as full-timers, we have 2 additional full-time staff. Jess Akia, who handles all of our public programming and school services, and then Dan Lund, who's our curator of collections. And then we've got 3 part-time staff as well that helps the place go. Patrice Roach, who handles all of our marketing material and publicity. Nancy Himmis, who is our administrative assistant. And then Caitlin Thurnall, who is our weekend coordinator and helps with all the weekend services we do as well. We also have, I should say, one of the most wonderful volunteer corps you can imagine, and that's part of what really makes the place go. And of course, we've got the foundation as well, and they do a great job of raising funds and awareness for the museum.
Well, the Elmhurst History Museum, a local entity, but with considerable reach and depth. Your background, Dan, you weren't always a curator of exhibits,
No,
I know.
I wasn't. Way back when, I got my undergraduate degree in technical theater and worked for about 3 years designing and building theater sets. That was in the 1980s, middle 80s, and I decided that maybe owning a home and eating on a regular basis was more fulfilling than maybe working in the theater, so I went into the construction industry and I remodeled houses for almost 15 years. And then I went back to graduate school and got my degree in public history, a master's degree in public history. And I've been fortunate to be able to kind of pull all 3 of those things together since getting out of graduate school. So I can do the historical research, I can design the exhibit, and then I can actually superintend its construction. So that's kind of my backstory, and that's how I got into exhibits and how I ended up in Elmhurst.
What is a normal? And I know there'll be years when there's more or less, and there'll be years there's probably no such thing as normal. But what's a regular exhibition schedule look like for the Elmhurst History Museum?
On an average year, we tend to have 4 shows at the museum. 2 that we usually design in-house, and we'll bring in 1 to 2 traveling exhibits. 2019, however, is going to be a little more extraordinary, actually. We have 2 traveling exhibits coming in and 3 exhibits that we're doing in-house as well. So it's going to be a chock-a-block and very busy year.
Okay, and we're going to get to 2019 here in just a second because we're coming to the end of 2018, and I want to go back just a little bit about 2018. Snoopy and the Red Baron sort of started the year off in a meaningful way in terms of your exhibits, and then Rink Rats followed that up. So what was it about Snoopy and the Red Baron that seemed to literally hit the classic home run, so to speak?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
I don't know. To me, it's a pop culture topic. It's something that speaks to multiple generations. And we were coming on the centennial of a lot of landmark anniversaries for World War I. So I think the timing, was very good on that. What are your thoughts?
I think the same. I mean, Snoopy and the Red Baron is an iconic, that's American. And especially if you're in my age bracket, you remember watching those cartoons on television when they were brand new. And every year you got to see those episodes repeated. So, going back that far and then coming forward, everybody knows Charlie Brown, Snoopy, the Red Baron story. And I think people really took advantage of the opportunity to come out and see some of the original artwork and learn some of the history of this character.
Well, and one of the things that the History Museum has done so well is build on the exhibit with ancillary extras. Some of those with Snoopy, I know Snoopy was in the parade and that kind of thing. That's pretty natural. But what other kinds of things did you do?
Well, we had, I got to tell you, Jess really lined up a gangbuster roster of programs, family-friendly programs, kid-friendly activities, including a whole week, we called it Snoopy Palooza, of different activities, right in time for spring break. So as the kids were out of school for the week, every day they had something fun to do, something fun to see, and then having the presence in the parade too, and Patrice doing such a good job of getting the publicity out. We had a lot of advanced exposure. We had like 1,500 people through the door in the first week of the exhibit between the programming and everything that was going on. That's an awfully busy week for a museum of our size, period. We really did well with that, I think. And then there were some cool anniversary programs too. Just on the centennial of the death of the Red Baron, we actually had Peter Fritchie, who's probably the foremost expert on World War I aviation, to talk about the real Red Baron. I thought that went over very well as well. And well, you got to see it. It was kind of your baptism by fire. So I'm curious what you think.
Yeah, I was, as Dave said, I got here towards the end of that exhibit. So, and I'm, wide-eyed, my new place, oh dear, what's going to happen. And I was really impressed with the museum's ability to handle those crowds, but also to put them together. When I met with my colleagues when I was interviewing for the position, and I was favorably impressed. But when I got here and actually got to see, some of the programs in action, to kind of see how the staff had put the exhibit in the gallery and then supplemented it and bumped up the historical content, I was favorably impressed, and I knew at that point I'd landed in the right spot.
So then, Rink Rats.
Yes.
Your
Rink
first
Rats,
exhibit.
Yeah.
And on the heels of Snoopy and the Red Baron, another great success for the museum, without doubt. For our audience that perhaps didn't see it, what was Rink Rats all about?
Rink Rats was exploring kind of the golden age of roller skating in the Chicagoland area. That period from about the 1930s until, I think we stretched it into the 70s or early 80s. But that period of time when almost everybody went roller skating. I mean, you didn't have iPhones, you didn't have the computer. A lot of people didn't have access to an automobile. So the local neighborhood skating rink was the place to go, where you could take your friends, meet members of the opposite sex, and it was socially acceptable, clean, fun place to go. So that was the basis of the exhibit. We emphasized really Elmhurst's local connection through the Elm skating rink, which so many people are familiar with. And using the Elm as kind of our local anchor, explored what was happening during the Golden Age more broadly across the Chicagoland region.
Well, and I know that exhibits, by and large, particularly the ones that are created and implemented by you, that link, that hook to Elmhurst history is very important.
Yeah, that's key.
And Rink Rats certainly, checked off all those boxes. And of course, there were ancillary events with that as well, including creating a roller rink in the parking lot.
Yeah.
That was the best. I got to say, that was opening night. We had School of Rock playing music. You could actually put on your skates, kids, adults, skate in the parking lot. We kind of brought the Elm back to Elmhurst for one night. Dan even fabricated a temporary Elm sign we were able to put out in the parking lot that night, which I thought was kind of neat and a nice homage. And the neat thing is we had multiple generations of skaters out there, everyone from 5 and 6 year olds to, we had a gentleman who was 72 who put everyone to shame to the point where I decided maybe I better not slap on my skates because he was running the rings around all of us. He was just terrific. And it was just a great family-friendly time. And then Jess reached out and brought in the Windy City Rollers and the Bruise Brothers, which is a roller derby team, for a skating night at the Lombard Rink. We had the Skating Tricks of the Trade with the Osiris Initiative out of Chicago and with some local skaters here too, and that was really cool, I have to say. So, it's truly a hands-on or maybe feet-on participatory experience in this case.
The effort to put an exhibit together, I'm particularly interested, Dan, in where does it start? I mean, I'll give you that, the idea has to generate somewhere, but
Sure.
when the idea has been decided upon, then what happens then? Is it a collaborative brainstorming, Do you wind up storyboarding in classic form the exhibit? How does that happen?
Well, I think every exhibit designer is going to do it a little bit differently, but it really starts with a good idea, and Rink Rats was a very good idea. And of course, that was generated before I arrived on the scene. But once that decision is made, weighing kind of the audience and what the story can be, we go into a period of, I refer to it as like a fishing trip, right? Just trying to see what's out there. And Rink Rats is a good example of how that process works, because the Elmhurst History Museum's collections related to roller skating and even the Elm are very modest. So using social media, putting the word out on the street, we were able to acquire through loans an enormous number of really wonderful objects. And so a lot of the earliest parts of this exhibit development process relate to connecting with the community and seeing what the community might have that they could offer and loan for the exhibit. And those are really, I think, the best exhibits, because, you know, I could have sat back and, you know, up in my office on the second floor and looked down upon the masses and said, here's what you need to know about roller skating in Elmhurst and the Chicagoland area. Well, I'm, you know, farm kid from Wisconsin, so what do I know? So any exhibit that can be crowd curated in that sense, and people come and tell us, and we share their stories,
Sure.
and they share their stories, resonates a lot farther in the audience than if we were kind of doing one-sided storytelling.
And then the actual creation and layout
Right,
of the exhibit
So,
comes about.
Yeah, in large part based on the resources, both objects and images that are available. In this case, we also took some oral histories of skaters who had skated at the Elm. As a staff, I'll pitch several ideas for kind of themes to hold it all together. As a staff, we kind of talk through what resonates, what we think will resonate, how we're going to illustrate that. So if we decide, well, we want to talk about this, well, what are the resources that we have to actually tell that story? And then I'll go into seclusion for a few days and figure out how it will lay out in the gallery, what the graphic look might be, bring that back to the staff. And again, you know, my colleagues are really good at saying, oh, that's just not cutting it, or this is close, why don't you try, you know, this? And so it becomes a collaborative effort to pull together the look and the feel of what we're after. And then it's an installation thing, which is an all hands on deck. Staff shows up in their jeans and they say, Dan, what do you need me to do? And I tell them, and it all comes out the other end. And it's kind of like the really simplified version of lots of, you know, complex iterations, because, you know, Dan Lund, our curator of collections, has to process all of the loans that are coming in, so we make sure that they go back to the people that are involved. And not everything can be used, so there's some diplomacy on his part that's required. Jess is thinking about how her programs can tie into what's in the exhibit gallery, and figuring out, okay, if I'm going to do a school tour or an adult tour of this gallery, what, you know, she'll ask me what are the kinds of things that I think are the most interesting that she might give in a tour group. Patrice is trying to figure out, okay, how can we hook an audience through the standard marketing channels of, you know, print media, social media.
So what did you learn about the first floor of the Gloss Mansion as it relates to future exhibits?
Future exhibits. I wish it was about 15 or 16 feet wider. It tends to be kind of long and skinny, but I think we can work with that. And I also learned that the
History of spaghetti.
yeah. There you go.
Food waste might be coming.
Well, roller coasters will work.
Yeah.
But you know, our entrance for people with mobility challenges is through a back door.
Right.
Staff offices are off that space, and so I got requests about the kinds of objects that are put next to the staff office door so that they can come and go. So, I mean, all of those practical considerations. But all in all, you know, it's a new space for me, so it's going to take a while before I think I get tired of it.
So now, Dave, in your former role, you were the hands-on curator of exhibits.
That was one of the many hats I've worn in my career at some
So
point.
now you're one of the all hands on deck without doubt, but you're also primarily the supporter of the exhibit creator. How's that feel?
It actually feels great, I have to tell you. I want to reiterate what Dan was talking about before. Creating an exhibit is really a collaborative process, and I think our team does a very good job of coming together, playing with ideas, spitballing different things, seeing what works, seeing what doesn't. That back and forth, that dialogue is so good. And my role at the end of the day, I want to create an environment where everyone is free to express those ideas and to think about some of those kind of crazy off the wall things that just might be so crazy it might work. That thing that's going to bring somebody in. The pop-up skating rink would be a perfect case in point. Jess comes to me and says, well, the way to really make this an exciting exhibit, and I think we get a lot of attention, is if we actually could skate that night. There's a beat. Okay, we're going to have a temporary skating rink. Okay, let's see how we can make that happen. And that's part of the excitement, though, too, is you just never know what any day is going to hold.
Sure.
Yeah.
We're going to come back and we're going to talk about the rest of what's going on right now as we end 2018, and I want to talk about 2019 as well. So thank you both. This is Elmhurst Time Travelers. We're talking about the Elmhurst History Museum, and we're going to talk more about that when we come right back.
Since the 1830s, Elmhurst has grown from a quiet farming community at the edge of Chicago into a vibrant suburban city that stands on its own. Much has changed since those early days. For more than 60 years, the Elmhurst History Museum has proudly shared the stories that make up Elmhurst's rich and unique history. Today, the Elmhurst History Museum's mission is to engage people with history through our exhibits, collections, and educational programs. The museum presents a wide variety of exhibits annually, including original exhibits planned by our staff, as well as national traveling exhibits from other institutions on a full range of history-related topics. The museum's award-winning exhibit on Elmhurst history in the second floor gallery is an innovative and fascinating look at the story of Elmhurst. Beyond exhibits, our programs and special events actively connect people with history through interesting lectures and tours, fun family activities, exhibit sneak previews, and large-scale special events like the annual Museum Day celebration. Our school programs provide hands-on interactive ways to learn about history. Children love to take part in the immersive experience at our Churchville one-room schoolhouse, led by a school marm from the early 1900s, as well as participate in old-fashioned games and I Spy activities during field trips to the museum. There's always something new to see and do at the Elmhurst History Museum, so be sure to stop by soon at 120 East Park Avenue in downtown Elmhurst. The museum is located in the landmark Gloss Mansion, just across from the Elmhurst Metro Station. The Elmhurst History Museum is open Sunday and Tuesday through Friday from 1 to 5 p.m. and Saturdays from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. Admission is free. For more information, please visit our website at elmhursthistory.org.
Welcome back to Elmhurst Time Travelers. We're talking about the Elmhurst History Museum, what's going on right now in the end of 2018, it's December after all, and what's going to happen in 2019. So it's a wonderful life.
It is.
And it is. I would agree with that, but we're talking about the exhibit. So where did that idea come from and how is it playing out?
All right. Well, this is actually, I'm very fortunate that I call Mr. Richard Goodson one of my friends. I met him back when I worked in Grays Lake a number of years ago, and he has a vast and wonderful collection of memorabilia from the film It's a Wonderful Life. It meant a lot to him growing up in some pretty tough circumstances if you talk to him. It was really kind of something very special to him. And as he got older, and he really made a success out of himself, he began to collect, movie stills to begin with, and then lobby cards, and then all kinds of interesting odds and ends from the film, and then more interesting odds and ends from all of the actors and actresses in the film. And it just grew to the point where he needed a place to really show this off. And so he and I collaborated a number of years ago on a rather modest display at that time of some of the things he had, and his collection has grown vastly since then. And so we saw a really nice opportunity at the end of the year to really showcase his collection, and also to showcase a couple of wonderful pieces from the museum's collection as well. So we've got some very rare paper ornaments from Dresden, Germany. Of course, we have a very large German population in Elmhurst, and some of these were collected by a World War I veteran, actually, and brought back home. And then also some Lee Sturgis holiday prints, and Lee Sturgis is probably the best known artist from the Elmhurst area. So it was kind of a neat way to create what we're calling Hometown Holiday, It's a Wonderful Life in Elmhurst. But there's going to be a lot from the film It's a Wonderful Life. Mm-hmm.
So he grew up in Pottersville is what you're saying.
Well, I don't know about that, but he would tell you it sure felt that way sometimes.
So it seems like it's a perfect pairing between a classic movie and kind of a classic town. What are some of the other things going on, the ancillary things that we talked about with the previous exhibits during the year that is playing into this? And this one's got a little shorter run, right?
Yeah, people look at you kind of funny if you have a holiday exhibit that runs into February. It's opening it actually opened in mid-November, and it's going to run into the first week in January. But we've really chocked that calendar full of a lot of very special and meaningful programs and different events. And so we're working with the Green Man Theater Group, of course. They're actually going to do a radio play version of It's a Wonderful Life, which I think is really neat. And we're working with Pints is doing It's a Wonderful Life trivia a night over there, which I think will be a lot of fun too. We're working with 151, one of the other restaurants in Elmhurst, and actually doing kind of a 40s themed menu and cocktail list, which I think is kind of a neat and elegant thing to do out in the community. Of course, our wonderful friends, Willis Johnson and all the great folks at the York Theater are going to screen the film and show it as well. So we're working with City Center to make a big splash out of this. So it's going to be a wonderful time all through December. So
I see what you did there.
I know, I can't help it.
So 2019, right on the horizon. What's the slate, and are there special challenges associated with the exhibits coming up? And I've got the list of them here, but I'll let you do that.
You take it away.
Okay.
These are your babies.
Coming up in January, and I have not yet committed all these dates to memory, is The Heart's Desire. And that's just going to be a lighthearted look at courtship and marriage rituals, drawing on some of the really impressive wedding dresses we have in the collection that go back to the late 19th century. So what were women wearing to get married? What were some of the customs? Where do some of these customs come from? And because this exhibit crosses the magical February 14th deadline, we'll be talking about Valentine's as well. So both those expressions of love through the Valentine, how the styles of Valentines evolved over the same period up until today. We're following that with an exhibit on political posters, right?
Yeah, Sign of the Times. That's
Sign of the Times.
On tour through Midwest Arts Alliance.
So the first exhibit is
Heart's
yours,
Desire is ours, yes.
and then Sign of the Times is travel.
That's a national
Yep.
traveling exhibit, yeah. And some really iconic political posters from the 19th, 20th, and 21st centuries, and then augmented by some local things
Right.
that we've been collecting as well. So.
Yeah, I mean, John Kennedy campaigned through Elmhurst. It's fun to look back at the railroad underpass. Politics involved in getting that referendum passed, so we're going to be exploring some of those kind of local issues and how those were graphically presented, how both sides in those debates presented themselves graphically in the same way that presidential candidates from opposing sides have presented themselves.
Okay. Worlds of Wonder.
That
That comes up in May.
It does. I'm hip deep in Worlds of Wonder. This is another one of those really good collaborative ideas that the staff came up with. And just like we did with roller skating, we're going to do the same thing with amusement parks. Because once upon a time, every community had an amusement park of one size or another. And some of the big ones in Chicago, if you go back in time far enough, are the White City and Riverview and others, the original version of Santa's Village. But there was Kittyland in Melrose Park, there was Dispensa's Kitty Kingdom. We'll claim that one as Elmhurst, even though it's just across the border. Yeah. Old Chicago was nearby. And just like with rink rats, we've made some connections in the community to find out what people have, what they might be willing to loan, and most importantly, what they remember about going to these amusement parks or working for these amusement parks. We really want to put roller coasters and Ferris wheels and merry-go-rounds are cool, but I think they're much more interesting when we put those in the context of the people that operated them and rode on them. And I think people are going to be able to really share experiences. One of the fun things about rink rats, which I think is going to be repeated with Worlds of Wonder, are the number of people, and I go through the gallery many times a day, the number of people that are standing in the gallery talking to each other. And we tend to think of an exhibit as a very kind of a static, personal, I'm going to look at these interesting things, I'm going to read these interesting stories. But what we really, really want people to do is talk about what they're seeing. And that was the case on a daily basis in rink rats. And that is, I think, going to be repeated because people are already very excited to talk about the amusement parks of their youth.
I have vivid boyhood memories of the chutes at Riverview.
Do you?
Oh,
okay.
Right.
And what I remember of them through the lens of childhood is excitement and fun.
Sure.
What I think about them now through the lens of adulthood is there were no safety straps.
Right.
There was nothing to hold you in. How the devil did you not fly out of there? And those are the kind of conversations you're exactly talking about. Yep. Sure. Then we have the power of children.
Yeah, that and it is a powerful traveling exhibit.
So that's going to be a little heavier than roller coasters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Absolutely.
And I think counter programming is very important for a museum. You've got to talk to a lot of different audiences and a lot of different areas of interest. And this is a very serious and very meaningful traveling exhibit. Uses the stories of Anne Frank, Ruby Bridges, and Ryan White to talk about how children have faced adversity and fear and prejudice, and the example that they still give us to this very day. So I expect that to be a very powerful exhibit, and I think we're going to have very strong interest in that one.
Yeah, it's a very short running exhibit again because it is a traveling show. Sure. So we're hoping people will take advantage of the window that we have it. Because
we've got a fifth one to do, but you bring up a question I wanted to ask. The intensity of putting up a traveling show versus, you probably don't have the same timing flexibility with a traveling exhibit as you would obviously with one you're doing yourself.
Traveling exhibit typically shows up 5 to 7 days before it's supposed to open. And they're never designed for your space. And so they will come with advice on how this might go in your gallery. These objects go with these objects, but the staff has to figure out how to do it. Now, there's some advanced paperwork that comes, so we have a sense of what's coming. But the power of children is too big for our gallery. So we have to make some decisions about how we're going to work this all together.
What's going to be there?
It'll be a tough timeline, I think.
So the end of 2019, approximately a year from now, railroads, all aboard, trains central to any Elmhurstonian's experience.
Oh, yes.
Every day. So what's that one going to be about? On 2019, by the way, by the end of 2019, we should know a lot more about the new metro station
Right,
in town
right.
too. So,
I don't know. When I've got it all figured out, I'll let you know. We know that Elmhurst owes its existence in large part to the railroad. I mean, the city that Elmhurst became and is today is a function of the railroad. And so we're going to talk about the context of rail transportation kind of locally and regionally and how that affected places like Elmhurst and the opportunities that that afforded them, and some of the complicating factors of having them run right through the middle of your city. So some serious history related to kind of the economics of the Industrial Revolution and the settlement and expansion of the Old Northwest, which are topics near and dear to my heart. But again, trains are one of those things that captivates people of all ages. And so we expect to partner with local model railroad groups, Lego train enthusiasts, and really create opportunities for this exhibit for that kind of multi-generational engagement in the gallery. So a place for people to come, a place for people to see, a place for people to do things, and again, hopefully a place where they can talk about what they're seeing.
And in Elmhurst, 2 active rail lines and
Right.
a former rail
Right.
line with a historic former station. So,
Yeah.
2018, looking backwards, was a year in Elmhurst full of centennial celebrations. The Chamber, York High School, the Memorial Day Parade. Does 2019 have such things within it?
Yeah, there are definitely a couple of milestones that we're going to be observing. One, 2019 will mark the 150th anniversary of when we actually changed our name to Elmhurst. So I think that always begs for looking backward and having some conversations about that. It marks the centennial of when Carl Sandburg, the great poet, writer, and collector of folk music, came here and moved to Elmhurst, actually. And so we're going to do a special program, musical program, actually, with Chris Valillo to mark that occasion as well. 2019 also is going to mark the centennial of our Legion, and so there's another great opportunity there. And then going forward, boy, you can see a lot of things on the horizon getting into 2020 and beyond, too. 2021, of course, the big 150th anniversary for Elmhurst College, and so I see a lot of things to stay tuned for and a lot of excitement there.
Yeah, it's interesting. We did a program some time ago on the year of 1871 and what that meant to the community. And of course, we're at the 150th anniversary of that date. So, a question for both of you: what excites you more, the idea and creativity of a new exhibit, or if you will, the night when it opens up and you see the fruits of your respective labors and people are in there viewing and talking, Dan, as you were suggesting? Which one excites you more? And you have to pick one. No ties.
What do you think?
I think for me it's the developing and building, so everything up to the opening. Night of the opening, I just kind of want to go home. Got to be honest.
You've seen it already.
I've seen it, and that harkens back to my days in the theater. You go through all those dress rehearsals and you've tweaked everything that you can tweak. Stick my head into the show, see that the audience likes it, go home, go to bed early. But I think I like the front end part because of the variety of things that I have to do. There's the research component, there's a design component, there are days when I'm sawing boards and screwing things together and slapping on paint. And I really enjoy that part about my job the most, the variety. So the process of getting to opening night, I think for me, is probably more exciting than the opening itself.
And I love opening night. I love the reveal. I love seeing people react for the first time to something that you've been living with for a year and sometimes longer, to see what people react to see, sometimes in ways that surprise you. You think, well, I wonder, what's going to happen here, or I think people are going to say this, and then, well, no, it turns out it's something else. And to go back to what Dan was mentioning about the rink rats, watching the interaction, the people pointing at something and they're sharing stories, to me, that's magic, and that's why we do it.
So we're about done here, but final thoughts on either what happened in 2018 or some futuristic thoughts about 2019 to close us out?
I guess as we come to the end of the year, I've been reflecting on my decision to leave a position I'd been in for 10 years and come to Elmhurst.
Okay.
And I have no doubt that that was the right decision. It's remarkable that a city like Elmhurst has and gives the support that it does to a municipal museum, history museum, that the city is proud of its heritage and wants to share that with people. I mean, there are a lot of people like me in the Elmhurst area that are not from Elmhurst. And it would be easy for a city to say, well, this is not an essential part of who we are, but Elmhurst embraces that through the city, through the foundation. And then having the staff that we have at the museum, I am really impressed with my coworkers. And so as we get to the end of the year and you start to think about, oh, did I make the right decision? I did. And so I'm excited, looking forward to see what we can do with exhibits down the road.
Yeah,
Dave?
I tell you, looking back at 2018, we had, some of our staff members, very recently had moved into their positions. We brought Dan on board. I was very new at the beginning of the year, and I think 2018 is the year we all came together as a team. We did some very exciting and wonderful things together, and looking forward to 2019, I'm excited because now we're all in the same place, on the same page, and as we look forward and we kind of plan for the future, the sky's the limit. We're going to have a lot of fun.
Well, thank you both. I appreciate you joining me here on our last program for 2018. But as it turns out, after 9 years and 37 programs, Elmhurst Time Travelers is going away. Perhaps not forever, but at least for a while. So I want to take this opportunity to thank all of my guests on those programs, the Elmhurst Heritage Foundation, the History Museum itself, and of course the fabulous Elmhurst Arconic Town crew and its various members over the years. And then Brian Berghager, your predecessor, Dave, and of course you as well. So it's been a really nice run, and we'll see what happens down the road. So for Elmhurst Time Travelers, I'm Ken Bartels, and we will see you again sometime. Take care.
Since the 1830s, Elmhurst has grown from a quiet farming community at the edge of Chicago into a vibrant suburban city that stands on its own. Much has changed since those early days. For more than 60 years, the Elmhurst History Museum has proudly shared the stories that make up Elmhurst's rich and unique history. Today, the Elmhurst History Museum's mission is to engage people with history through our exhibits, collections, and educational programs. The museum presents a wide variety of exhibits annually, including original exhibits planned by our staff, as well as national traveling exhibits from other institutions on a full range of history-related topics. The museum's award-winning exhibit on Elmhurst history in the second floor gallery is an innovative and fascinating look at the story of Elmhurst. Beyond exhibits, our programs and special events actively connect people with history through interesting lectures and tours, fun family activities, exhibit sneak previews, and large-scale special events like the annual Museum Day celebration. Our school programs provide hands-on interactive ways to learn about history. Children love to take part in the immersive experience at our Churchville one-room schoolhouse, led by a school marm from the early 1900s, as well as participate in old-fashioned games and I Spy activities during field trips to the museum. There's always something new to see and do at the Elmhurst History Museum, so be sure to stop by soon at 120 East Park Avenue in downtown Elmhurst. The museum is located in the landmark Gloss Mansion, just across from the Elmhurst Metro Station. The Elmhurst History Museum is open Sunday and Tuesday through Friday from 1 to 5 p.m. and Saturdays from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. Admission is free. For more information, please visit our website at elmhursthistory.org. The Churchville Schoolhouse opens the door to the best education in history. Visitors to the historic Churchville one-room schoolhouse take a step back in time to watch history unfold in a restored and accessible National Register of Historic Places property that dates to the 1850s. Today, students can walk in the footsteps of local farm children from the early days of DuPage County for an authentic living history experience led by a school marm from the early 1900s. A visit to the Churchville one-room schoolhouse is hands-on, educational, and fun. Participants use slate chalkboards and McGuffey readers for the day's lessons, and children will be asked to follow proper classroom etiquette. Reading, writing, and arithmetic are all practiced, and students can test their skills during an old-fashioned spelling bee. And of course, no school day is complete without recess, featuring games of the early 1900s. The Churchville Schoolhouse is a popular program for scouts and day camps too. Group visits can be arranged for service clubs, tour groups, and other adult organizations as well. The Churchville Schoolhouse Living History program is operated by the Elmhurst History Museum. Call the museum today to book a field trip or find out more information at 630-833-1457 or visit our website at churchvilleschoolhouse.org.